Previously on Proto Death Knight. So my first steps in the Barrens, more specifically in the Crossroads, began with killing ostriches to collect their beaks. As brutal as that sounds, we rely purely on the weapon's flat damage, and that's where slow weapons become a problem. When a hit does land, it can deal solid damage, but there's no guarantee, and when the attack gets dodged or missed, you're stuck waiting for the next swing. At this stage, this build is not fun to play. That was obvious from the start. A Warlock tanking mobs directly is never a good idea. And this is no exception. Sure, the damage is, let's say, decent, but that's not enough. So I headed back into Ragefire Chasm to cool off a bit after my travels through the Barrens. I also wanted this to be a proper goodbye to the dungeon. I knew I wouldn't be coming back here again. And I figured I might as well finish Thrall's quest while I was at it. As expected, things were going smoothly. Until I noticed that they know something's off. On the other hand, one of them was clearly laughing at me. As we continued dismantling everything inside the instance, I started thinking about what I could do next to push my character even further. Unfortunately, the plan requires a higher level and a lot more gold. So we'll talk about that in the near future. But wait a second, what exactly is the problem here? Are they seriously mocking the most powerful and the only Death Knight they'll ever meet in their miserable lives? Nothing changed as we pushed forward. These fools clearly had no idea who they were dancing with. So I decided to check whether something was actually wrong or if they simply couldn't comprehend my greatness. And as it turned out, things weren't bad at all. I was pulling solid DPS using nothing but 2 spells and auto attacks. As we went on, I kept up just fine, consistently near the top of the damage meters and sometimes even in first place. My only message to that pieces of shit was simple.
Shut your fucking mouth!
After our mage failed to produce any meaningful damage, he left the group. In the end, slightly irritated, I finished the dungeon and went to turn in the completed quest. Thrall, as usual, sent me to Nero, who then immediately sent me back to Thrall, and that's when I received one of the most desired items for pretty much every class at this level. Staff of Orgrimmar. I also paid a visit to the auction house and picked up a few upgrades. Cape of the Eagle, Gloves of the Monkey, Braces of Intellect, Sandals of the Falcon, and Seer's Pants. After returning to the Barrens, I went back to clearing quests, starting with killing centaurs for their braces. I was in a much better headspace going into this stage of the journey. I had chosen a path. I knew which items I wanted to go for, and I had a goal, and I was determined to see it through. The centaur grind took long enough that I ended up hitting another level along the way. I spent the talent point on suppression, which I plan to max out eventually, since it gives us a much better chance that enemies won't resist our curses. I was genuinely in a good mood and already hungry for more upgrades, so I decided to finally finish the Harpy quest. Especially since there wasn't much left to do at this part of the zone unless I headed further south. Just like with the centaurs, this turned into another grind for quest items. This was also the moment when I realized it was time for a weapon upgrade. Farming harpies made it painfully clear that everything was taking way too long. Unfortunately, this was yet another moment where I chose a slow weapon instead of a fast one. Speed 2.50. Believe me, this was the last time I invested in a slow weapon. At the time I thought it was an amazing purchase, a fantastic upgrade, but once I returned to the harpies, I quickly realized that nothing had really changed. The damage felt similar and the swings were still painfully slow. Who could have possibly predicted that? Right? After turning in the harpy quest, I went back to the centaurs and grouped up with other players who were doing the exact same task, and together we killed Warlock. Later I tested the dried seeds in one of the cracks inside underwater hole, and since someone had already cleared out the raptors in their nest, I recovered the stolen silver and headed back to the crossroads. After turning in the quests, I also handed Warlock's head to Rektar and accepted the follow-up quest for another centaur. By pulling Hezrul deeper into the water, and with the help of another player, we managed to relieve him of his head as well. To wrap things up, I quickly dealt with the turtles and collected their shells. For Hezrul's head, I received our first ring, +3 to agility and +1 stamina. Not ideal for my build, but stats are stats, and at this point I'll take whatever I can get. Next on the list was Echeyaki, the albino lion, and despite all my constant complaining about weapons and how unfun the gameplay can feel at times, this fight actually went really well, fast, clean and satisfying. That pushed me to level 18, and naturally, I went back to killing raptors again. At this point, all the quests are starting to blur together. Everything involves killing something. While I was at it, I also knocked out a few quests in Ratchet, like killing pirates. I was mostly hoping something interesting might drop. They're humanoids after all, but honestly, I didn't even verify whether that made sense, so I probably wasted way too much time there. I also defeated Baron Longshaw using the highly advanced strategy of luring 2 other players plus their escort NPC into the fight. Definitely not accidental. I managed to collect the Terramore medals surprisingly fast, since every single mob drops the quest item. Either that or I was just incredibly lucky, which I doubt. Eventually I returned and finally finished the raptor quest that had been interrupted by my Ratchet detour. I also learned a new skill, Searing Pain, which later turned out to be extremely useful thanks to its fast cast time. I officially wrapped up my time in the Barrens at level 19, and I have to be honest, this zone is so boring that I didn't even record gameplay from halfway through level 18 to almost halfway into level 19. But don't worry, all I did was some basic quests in Camp Taurajo, so you didn't miss anything important. Now it's finally time for new challenges. At last, freedom. Our journey continues into Stone Talon Mountains, but what happened there? That's a story for another episode. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you happy holidays, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Take care and see you soon.